Studying in medical school started to feel like cheating. And not because I was cutting corners, but because everyone else was suffering. I wasn't studying more, I was just thinking differently. Most medical students study like they're just gripping onto information as tightly as possible, just terrified of forgetting. That low grade panic that really never goes away. And that feeling disappeared for me. Not because I was smarter and not because I was studying harder, but because I stopped studying the way we were taught. And I also just started using mind maps the way that they're supposed to be used. So most people think mind maps are a study tool, but they're not. What they are is a way of thinking on paper. Now, if all you're doing is drawing bubbles and connecting lines to them, you are missing the point. And that's why they don't work for most students. This video isn't about how to draw a mind map, it's how to think differently and how to think in a way that makes med school manageable, predictable, and honestly, lighter. So most of us were trained to think like this: treatment, diagnosis, risk factors, and symptoms, just one after the other. That's checklist thinking. Now, this feels really productive. Just like going over a textbook or even like running through questions, it feels good. But when second order questions come in exams, that's when this thinking and this studying really falls apart. In didactic years, everything is lecture based. So we're always in the lecture hall listening to a professor. And whether we like it or not, we're mostly being trained to retain information and to do really well on exam, not to reason how doctors do in real life and reason through things, because real medicine doesn't ask, do you recognize this? It asks, do you actually understand this? And unfortunately, most of us weren't trained to study that way. So this is the shift. Stop asking what and start asking why. So why does this disease exist? Who can get it? Who can't get it? And if this hormone is out of the picture, why does it change? And this is the big thing. Once you understand why, the what becomes super easy and understandable. I'll give a really good example in a minute. So a mind map isn't something you finalize like notes. It's something you interrogate. So again, you can't just read something and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because 10 minutes later, an hour later, or even a couple days later, it's not going to make sense. So you really have to ask and really focus on what you're going through and say, does this really make sense? Is this connected to that? Is this connected to something else? Does this group into something else that I already know, or is this totally new to me? You literally have to talk to yourself when you're studying. So before lecture, I don't try to master everything. I just preview. So I'm just trying to create a mental scaffold in my mind of the topic as a whole, all the big picture things. And this first structured mind map is very rough, incomplete, and usually looks pretty horrible, but that's the point. We're just trying to guess on things that may connect with each other. The big thing is we're just trying to calibrate the mind to the topic. And I preview every single time, whether I'm behind or not. This is non-negotiable. This is just really, really important within my studying technique and specifically with mind maps. So mainly I just skim through lectures, look through main ideas, but also I go through like the first slide of the PowerPoint, and then I go all the way to the end of the PowerPoint deck and see, well, how do these connect? Why are they in the same presentation? And that's how we can kind of start to connect the dots and really reduce the workload, but also reduce the amount of information we're trying to pull in. This also really reduces stress or anxiety or that feeling of being overwhelmed when you get to lecture and you feel like you don't know anything. And when you're going from the first slide to the 10th slide, and then you're going to the 20th slide, and then you think of something and you're asking yourself why, you just go back and forth. This is a really good sign, and it means that you're doing something right. Now, once you have the structure, you're just basically going to be filling in the gaps. So with the lectures, watching the presentation online or in class, and ChatGPT. So I ask ChatGPT a lot of questions while I'm studying because I want quick answers, because I'm trying to connect the dots and I'm trying to think of relationships and group different things in different spots, and then I'll organize them into my already structured framework. And again, when I'm listening to the professor or going through the textbook and going through readings, I'm not just collecting a bunch of facts and like throwing them on my mind map. What I'm doing is I'm just really trying to reinforce a structure that I've already created and say, oh, well, these two things aren't connected, so maybe I should change that relationship. I sometimes just rip through like hundreds of Anki cards that previous med students have created for us just to get exposure. This is usually closer to test time, and when my mind map is almost fully complete, then I just use Anki or all these like lower level learning tools just to get that exposure, and just so I can kind of get these little like extra tidbits that can get me like a higher score. So the beginning part where I'm previewing, that'll get me like into the 80% or 85% range. And then if you do want the next 10 to 15% or so, then that's when you use like other resources. And this is really important. Anki, and specifically questions, they're not the foundation. They're just there to really sharpen your structure. So this is a good example. Why you get sick when you don't sleep. So now most like med students specifically, they would memorize something like this. The lack of sleep weakens the immune system, and you're more likely to catch a cold, and you feel tired and run down. So you've just memorized the facts, but that doesn't explain anything. Now let's actually ask why. When you don't sleep, the first thing that changes isn't your immune system, it's your stress hormones. Now I can put sleep down, cortisol up, immune cells suppressed to immune response down, viruses win. So you're not getting sick because your body is weak, you're getting sick because your body is in survival mode. And then you could ask, well, what's survival mode? Does cortisol have to do with survival mode? When a bear is chasing you, you want cortisol to be high so that you can run away from the bear. So list-based studying gives you the answer, but mind map thinking gives you the explanations. And this is the main thing with medical students, and I've done this where there's just so much information being thrown at you, you feel like you want to just learn it as quickly as possible. But that's not the right way to go. It may, again, feel productive, but it's not. If you've just memorized fact A, B, and C, you sit down and write the test and read a question, and you're having to decide, does fact A influence fact B? So you're having to really synthesize in the exam, which is just a waste of time, and it's also super stressful. So this revelation that I had, you guys will be able to relate. So what I noticed about the top students is this: they didn't just study, they chased the why. They went down those rabbit holes. They went through like almost not hours, but longer study sessions just to really figure out all these nitty-gritty things. But that's the strategy, is going deep down that rabbit hole to really investigate and interrogate all these like little parts. Most students learn medicine the way it's presented. I learned it by asking what had to be true for it to exist. Whenever I asked some of my friends and they said, wow, I just, went down the rabbit hole with this one topic, they just know so much. Now, that's the great thing about it, is that even if you go deeper into learning and higher order thinking, you're actually making the topic easier for you. And that's what I do with every single topic that I learn in medical school. And this is the best part. This isn't all or nothing. There's different levels to mind map thinking. So level 1 is ask better questions and just roughly do mind maps. And now level 2 is predictions, contradictions, and cross connections. So you want to predict and you want to guess. It is a little bit scary in the beginning because you want to be right, but that's the part of learning, and that's the part of the neuroplasticity part, that you're trying to form really good connections even though you're guessing on all these things, because now your brain is like, okay, well, I've guessed on all these things and wow, I was super wrong. And I guess, at least for me, it kind of creates this little bit emotional response to say, oh, whoa, that's the wrong way of thinking. I should go this route. And now level 3 is teaching from first principles and priming instead of relearning. A lot of students and medical students, they go back and they have to relearn everything. Just personally, when I go back to my mind maps, I don't necessarily have to relearn. And then when I come back to the mind maps, let's just say a week later before the exam, then I look at my mind maps, and then anything and everything that I wrote down, it just primes me to think about something. So for example, I'm not gonna say, just wait, I actually forgot what Beck's triad is. I know it's for cardiac tamponade, but okay. So Beck's triad is hypotension, JVD, so elevated jugular venous pressure, and then muffled or distant heart sounds. So instead of saying cardiac tamponade in a little circle and then 3 lines saying hypotension, JVD, and muffled heart sounds, I'll just put like wherever I have cardiac tamponade, and then I'll put Beck's triad. So now when I come back to my mind map and I read Beck's triad, I'm not just reading, oh, JVD, muffled heart sounds, and hypotension. I'm going back and saying, wait, what's Beck's triad again? And then already that's an active learning process. I'm saying, okay, Beck's triad is this, and then I would list the 3. You don't have to hold on to information like you're hanging off the edge of a cliff anymore. You're not scared of forgetting because it actually makes sense. You're not stacking facts. You're building a structure that your brain wants to keep. This is why medical school feels manageable to me. I don't have to study hours and hours because I think differently. And once you feel that shift, you cannot unfeel it.